video, we're going to talk about the reality of working at Goldman Sachs, how to get hired, and you're going to listen to the experience of myself, someone who's worked at Goldman Sachs for several years and been in the finance industry for over 10 years. And we're going to have another example of someone we're going to listen to in this video who also worked at Goldman Sachs. So the first point is around understanding the reality of the job, right? Don't just say you want to work there because of the brand name. Are you familiar with the type of work hours, the type of work environment? And that's an important takeaway point from this video.
I remember waking up at like 10 a.m. and my BlackBerry is just like going off. It's beeping red. My VP's blowing up my phone. And he's like, John, check your email. We just got this note from the client. They need a board deck for this huge M&A deal we're doing. Completely new model, completely new scenarios, all by tonight for tomorrow morning's emergency board meeting. And so I'm like, okay, it is what it is. Like, I'm used to working at this point, right, on weekends. But this particular day was bad because I get in, I crank through the model, I crank through the deck by like 5 or 6 o'clock because I'm like, I've got dinner at 6. I'm gonna make it on time. I'm not gonna be flaky with my friends because of work. And so we send off to the client. I'm like, done for the day. We're going to dinner. We're gonna have a good day. We're gonna start the work week tomorrow. Well, I get to dinner. I'm already like 45 minutes late at this point. It's across Manhattan. And I sit down, I check my BlackBerry, and the note from the client is like, this is not what we're looking for. We need this. And the deflation that happens in me is I sit down for dinner and I look at my friends and I'm like, guys, I'm so sorry, I need to go. And so I get back to the office and like, I just want you to imagine like the floor I work on. It's like hundreds of desks. It's like a Wall Street bullpen trading floor. And just like me, this poor little second year analyst working alone. And so I crank all this stuff out for this new model, this new deck, and I finish like the whole thing and send it over to the client. It's like 3:34. It's a Monday morning, keep in mind. And I'm leaving the office in like hungover Sunday clothes. We're talking like gym shorts and a t-shirt. And the traders get in the morning like really early to start the market open. And I remember walking out of the building through the turnstiles and like tired, hungover looking. And I make eye contact with this trader who's like in a full suit, Monday morning slick back hair. And he gives me this look in his eyes. And it was just this sad, he just goes, and it just hit me. And it was the saddest thing. And it was the saddest moment. I was like, what am I doing?
Do you really want to do it? Because lots of people want to do it for the status and the prestige of the particular role, right? Are you comfortable working those type of long hours, making sacrifices in the sense that not literal sacrifices like you see in Hollywood, but sacrifices when it comes to your friends and family in terms of being able to meet with them and spend time with them on the weekend, because you will have to work on the weekend in many cases when it comes to some of these high paying jobs in investment banking. So make sure you actually want to do that and you're comfortable with dedicating your entire life and work hours and weekends to that particular company, Goldman Sachs in this case, because you don't want to be in a situation where you start working and then all of a sudden you hate it, you're miserable at it, and you end up getting laid off after starting or quitting. And I have seen 2 or 3 examples of that where like a more junior analyst was doing kind of a good job, a decent job, but his manager kind of didn't feel like he was invested in it, and he ended up firing that employee. I've seen other instances where someone who has very good technical skills, working long hours, doing all the right things, 2-3 cases like this, so it's actually, and they ended up going back to education to relearn something and develop a new skill. In that case, it could be their technical ability to work in maybe medicine instead of finance. Some people went back to university to become a professor after working at Goldman Sachs or other top investment banks, because it's not for everyone. You have to really think about whether it's actually for you or you're just doing it for the social status. And then also you want to, be around, if it depends whether you want to treat your co-workers like your friends, because in reality, if you're working those long work hours in these particular jobs, you have to develop a friendship type of environment with your co-workers. It still is kind of cutthroat and ruthless, but your social time will be spent with them, right? So if you want to be in these type of roles, you will have to go to after work drinks with them. You'll have to kind of hang out with them, and you'll have to treat them as a bit of your extended family, right? Because even though you'll do your best probably not to discuss too much of your personal life with them, what a little time you have for your personal life, you're not going to be discussing it too much with your co-workers. But because you're going to spend so much time with them, you're inevitably going to form some form of friendship, and you have to be careful how you navigate that, right? And with any type of corporate environment where you are working long hours, you do become kind of isolated from the normal life or the normal world outside of that. So just be comfortable with that if you are going to these type of environments. And of course you might get judgmental family members and friends who think you're overcommitted to the job, who might not understand that type of environment just does demand that level of work hours, right?
Number one, the work just like wasn't that fulfilling, right? It's intellectually interesting, but you don't ever feel like you're making a real impact, and you definitely don't feel like you're helping anyone. And then number two, I think is the most important thing, what I didn't realize is that getting a job at Goldman actually opened up even better opportunities for me. So what I mean by that is, like, once you get a job at Goldman, it opens up so many other doors for you that are actually even better jobs. So for example, you can get in private equity and venture capital, which is what I went into. You're much more likely to go into a great business school, for example, Stanford, which I went to. And so that's why I'm so grateful for having gotten the Goldman job, because it was the first time in my life where I just like worked super hard for something and saw all of these doors open in my life. And that's why I'm
So understand the exit opportunities, because it can be quite intense, right? And you might be able to do it for several years. Some people stick at it for decades. But if you're aware of the exit opportunities and it's not going quite well, or you kind of don't like it, at least you know, okay, after 3 years or even 2 years, depending on the circumstances, that there'll be an exit opportunity for you. You know, jobs where it might still be high finance, but less work hours, private equity, venture capital, and that's your exit plan or your plan B if you don't find the work fulfilling, right? And that's another thing to look out for. If you're looking to get hired by Goldman Sachs, don't expect all the work to be the most interesting and exciting. And that brand name of Goldman Sachs will help you, you know, get your foot into the next opportunity, because there's lots of key skills you do learn that will be applicable to other jobs and other industries, dealing with corporate mind games and office politics, understanding the basics of how clients, organizations and businesses work. And those are all things you can learn from working at Goldman Sachs. So it is a double-edged sword in terms of, as I say, understanding the long work hours. The work might not be the most fulfilling, but there are good positives there. Having that brand name on your resume, being able to find good exit opportunities that might still pay well. And just as a side note, I noticed that this guy particularly here, he seems relatively healthy. He's living a relatively chilled life, focusing on his own business. And this is key because he has his savings and investments, and he's kind of self-employed. He worked in venture capital. He's his own kind of venture capitalist based on what I can understand about what he currently earns as income. These things are not necessarily possible in investment banking long term, because he has a bit more, as I say, work-life balance. If you're in investment banking long term, you have to understand the work-life balance isn't there. It's a bit like corporate law or working in a senior level at one of the big four accounting firms. You're going to have to dedicate significant amounts of your time there, which will take a toll on your personal life and your health. Just bear that in mind. That's another thing to look out for. And really, the same way I'm explaining to you, you know, how we're going to come on to some of the points about how to get hired in a few minutes, but really setting yourself up in terms of the right mindset. Okay, how long are the work hours? What level of commitment am I willing to dedicate, and for how many years? This will set you in the right mindset of having a decent time frame when you're stepping into a job like Goldman Sachs.
This is where it's really important to use LinkedIn as your best friend. Basically, you want to find some employee there that works in that division that you're applying for, and you want to find some sort of shared connection. So the easiest one for this is like, let's find an alum of your university. So for me, I went to UNC for undergrad. And so specifically in that, I found a lot of UNC alums that worked across Wall Street, and I built a shared rapport there. But you can also find different ways to actually get in that are based off of, you know, personal background or shared experience. So for example, when I was an analyst, I actually had like listed on my LinkedIn that I was an Eagle Scout. And so I had actually multiple Eagle Scouts from completely different universities, some smaller universities especially, that would reach out to me like, hey, like I'm an Eagle Scout, would love to chat with you because of our shared experience. I'm really interested in what you're doing and I'd love to learn more. And so as it relates to like, right.
And the thing is, when it comes to your CV and your LinkedIn profile, and this will lead on to messaging and networking on the platform, is having a decent narrative throughout your previous experience, throughout your educational experience, that makes you relevant to getting the next role at Goldman Sachs. The next step of your career and your life journey being at Goldman Sachs should be a neat fit within what you've previously done. Maybe you previously studied finance or a related topic. You worked at other finance firms. You maybe did an internship, things like that. So it all shows you're pointing in the right direction of Goldman Sachs being the next logical step, because sometimes people just want to work there because of, like I said, the brand name. Like some people just want to work at Google because it's Google. You really kind of need to make sure you're pointing in the right direction going there when it comes to being able to network and get someone to take you seriously as a current employee at Goldman Sachs or as a recruiter. So that's always things to look out for. Now, in my experience, I managed to get my role at Goldman Sachs through making sure my resume was on several recruitment websites, not just Goldman Sachs, and I got in touch with a recruiter through that particular avenue. It wasn't necessarily just LinkedIn, it was leveraging tons of other applications. I can let you know through my career advice service, link in description to learn more about that. And also other things you can do is speak with alumni from your university, as he mentions here, attend recruitment events. That would be in your industry, in your locality. They're typically based in, any of the finance hubs, London, New York, their meetup events, their recruitment events at your university too, as I say. And this works at junior levels, networking with junior employees. So what he's mentioning here on LinkedIn, it makes sense when you're at more junior levels of your career. You might reach out to other people who recently graduated from your university or your college and they've started working at Goldman Sachs. You can message them and try to build a network there. And when it comes to more senior levels, it's more about, reaching out to your professional network, but also recruiters. Recruiters might be a bit more helpful, of course, because they can see your LinkedIn profile. And I can help optimize your LinkedIn profile through my career advice service. Again, link in the description if you're interested in that. To optimize that for recruiters to really see your experience, to help you get a role at a major company like Goldman Sachs. And when it comes to messaging people on the LinkedIn platform, maybe at companies where you want to work, as he mentioned here, shared interest and shared experience are the key way of doing that. So, when you're checking other people's LinkedIn profile that you want to speak with or you want to message, check their hobbies, check their personal interests that they might have listed on their LinkedIn profile, any friendships you have, anything you have in common, universities you both went to, colleges you both studied at, things like that, and then mention that, and they might be more inclined to respond rather than if you're just a complete stranger who wants to work at Goldman Sachs, right? And just make it clear to them when you are reaching out to them that you do value their time. You could go for a coffee with them after work near their office. So make sure you know where the Goldman Sachs office is, wherever you're located. In London, it's near the Blackfriars Bridge, for example, and there's coffee shops there. So you can maybe say we can meet up for a coffee and we can talk there. You can also talk about how you can help them. For example, if you end up networking with a recruiter at Goldman Sachs or at any other major company you're applying for, you can tell them that, you can help them organize their recruitment events at your university or your college. You can help be a representative or a middleman between your university and their company, Goldman Sachs in this case, to help them organize company events there. Help them when it comes to maybe organizing their sponsorship for certain societies. So being the middleman can kind of help you in those instances, and seeing what you can offer to people who currently work there that you might have a limited amount of expertise or leverage to offer them, but that's something better than nothing, so they might be more inclined to speak with you. In this next clip, what we're going to cover is how to prepare for your technical interview, right? And there are more technical aspects that you do need to go over depending on the role you're applying for, which you can just relearn through looking through your college or your university studies, doing some preparation, which I can provide through my career advice service as interview preparation skills. I went through 9 interviews for my Goldman Sachs job offer. I had to go through, so it's 3 rounds of interviews, an hour and a half each, 30 minutes each for 1 or 2 people. So it ended up being about 9 interviews in total before I got the job offer. So I can talk you through how that process works. In other cases, you might have super day interviews where you have like a whole day back-to-back interviews, which can be quite stressful. So just be aware of that type of interview environment. And then also other things to prepare for your interview would be, reading up the finance news, making sure you're aware of any recent business initiatives and business projects in the particular team and department you want to work in. So let's listen to some of his experience too and how he prepared for interviews.
Specifically getting to know your technicals. So this is like understanding the markets, understanding finance. Basically, once you get into your interview process, people start grilling you on like, walk me through a discounted cash flow model, or like walk me through a balance sheet. And these are just things you just need to understand mechanically, like what is finance, like what is profit, what is revenue, all that kind of stuff, like what drives a business and how do you pitch a stock, all these random questions like this.
So a lot of these things, they seem quite easy, particularly if you're, just fresh out of college, fresh out of university. But think about them in the broader context of things. Firstly, if you are more experienced, maybe go back and recheck some of these basic fundamentals that, because you might not deal with it on a day-to-day basis, and you might have forgotten some of these fundamentals, but just look back over them in case you're going for an interview. And the other thing is also about taking all this technical knowledge and theory and applying it in the real world. So can you bridge the gap between, say, looking at the discounted cash flow model and how a major corporations like Nvidia or Tesla works? So bridging the gap between reality and theory is important, because that's the type of interview skills that you'll need to have. Now, next up, we're going to talk about preparing for those long interviews in a bit more detail. So listen up to this.
So you have your first round interview, which is generally online, and then you have super days, which is like this really scary back-to-back day where you fly in and you like go through like 15 or 10 or 5 back-to-back interviews with bankers of all sorts of seniority. And so I was really lucky in the sense that I actually had 2 different super days with Goldman. I was interviewing for both their banking division and their sales and trading division. And so I think I'm unfortunately very well qualified to give you guys advice on this because I had way too many reps. So the best piece of advice I actually got from a Goldman banker as I was going through the interview process, he was like, John, stop overthinking things, like just be a human. And that is the best advice that I have for you guys is like, we get so tight and constricted and nervous and anxious about the interview process and you start to be a robot. But you have to pass the airport test, which you have to be a human for. And what the airport test is when you think about all these bankers who are busy during their day, like running around, what they care about is they actually want to have an enjoyable conversation with someone. And so they ask themselves subconsciously the test of like, do I actually want to spend 6 hours trapped in an airport with this person? And so you have to have the combination of knowing your technicals and fundamentals, being clearly competent for the job with a good work experience, but then on top of that, just be yourself and be a human, and that's how you're going to crush the interviews.
It all comes down to whether they like you or not, and that's something you can't necessarily control. You can be friendly and charismatic as much as you can in those interviews, but there's a limit to that in the sense that at the end of the day, they might like you, they might not like you, right? And it's like you can't really control all those aspects. So try to be interpersonal, mention similar hobbies that you might have as them. Lots of these people, as you'd probably expect in the finance industry, what is the popular hobby there? Lots of people like to go on skiing trips, wine drinking. Their typical perspectives on life might be anti-conservative, more pro-liberal, pro-woman, anti-male. These are the general kind of talking points you might have, right? That, as long as you're aware of that, like I say, the drinking culture is heavily involved when it comes to the finance environment, going to expensive restaurants, things like that. So just so you're aware of those type of things, right? There's lots of foodie culture, if you want to use the word foodie, like people going to, like I say, new restaurants, being into expensive wine, skiing trips. These are all the type of things that come up. So I'm not saying you have to pretend and create a whole new set of fake hobbies, but if you know anything around that, you might mention that kind of briefly, and then just so it might resonate with what they would expect or what they would want in a coworker, because you have to be likable to these people. And as I mentioned, if you have a narrative on your CV and your previous experience showing Goldman Sachs as the logical next step, that's something that will also help you stand out. And it's also about making sure that you have some depth to your character. Like I say, when it comes to being a 3-dimensional person, not just someone who with all the right boxes, they went to a top university, or they have a finance degree, or they worked at another big bank. They're looking like more, okay, is this a type of character, type of personality I'd want around me on a regular basis, right? And it's very easy to kind of do the company research and prepare for some of these things. And like I say, it's something I can help with through career advice. So it's very interesting how to prepare for these type of scenarios. It's something I've dealt with myself. This individual on the screen has also dealt with this. And if you're interested in learning more, I can provide you some direct career advice. The general tips there, like I say, interview prep, networking, improving your resume, standing out to recruiters, and being on the top of your game in those long, grueling interviews and not letting them deliberately try to undermine you. Sometimes they try to gaslight you and test you with difficult personalities to see if you'll be able to deal with different other characters within the workplace environment. There are 2 recommended videos on your screen right now, and I'll see you next time.